Good evening. I'm Cathy Johnson, and I chair the Coalition for Responsible Data Center Development. Welcome to this public forum about hyperscale data centers, which we're co-sponsoring with the Minnesota Women's Press. Editor Mikki Morrissette is behind me and will be handling the Q&A and has been really instrumental in helping plan this event. I'm so happy to see the faces of friends and neighbors. Some of you I know, some of you I don't. And welcome to our panelists as well. Peter Wagenius is with Sierrra Club North Legislative Director, Sierrra Mooradian from CURE. That's a nonprofit looking out for us in our rural communities with regard to water and land use, etc. Former Minnesota Senator Patricia Torres is now with Minnesota Interfaith Power and Light. Two local legislators, Senator Bill Lieske and Representative Roach. And I'm also so happy that a coalition member, Feshami, is the panelist, bringing many years of experience, technical experience, to the stage. He was a chief architect of data centers with experience in several Fortune 500 companies. And a special shout out to Elli of Vanguard Media, who is taping this for us. So let your friends who are unable to attend tonight know that there will be a taped version available soon. And I want to shout out to Mark Legvold, who's here, a candidate from Senate 58 and a local farmer. And he's here to learn, as most of you are, about hyperscale data centers that are being proposed in record numbers in Dakota County. A shout out to Drew Larson, our local rep from the Dakota County Soil and Water Conservation District is here. And my MCEA friends, thank you for coming. Aaron Clems, Amelia Volas, and Ben Olson. And the last shout out goes to everybody here that has a t-shirt on that looks like mine. And I see some of the coalition members didn't wear their t-shirts, but these are folks who helped immensely. It's been a joint effort to put on an event like this, so thank you for everyone that's here. As chair of the Coalition for Responsible Data Center Development, I took a risk when I decided to hold a public meeting in an outdoor venue. But tonight it looks like the weather gods are smiling on us, and we couldn't have a more appropriate setting to think about how would a hyperscale data center actually affect our community, our county, our state, and beyond. And the pastoral feeling of this park is what Minnesotans have come to love and enjoy and expect our local officials and state legislators to protect and to sustain. This cannot be taken for granted. The Coalition for Responsible Data Center Development has worked long and hard to try to spread the word about hyperscale data centers like the one proposed in the former Fountain Valley Golf Course site and the ISD 192 properties in Farmington. There are 9 more proposed in Dakota County alone. It's been a tough assignment for us because the city of Farmington officials have frankly tasted the Kool-Aid from which developer tract land management of Colorado has fed them with false or exaggerated promises of panacea. If only you'll let this hyperscale data center come to your town. And with non-disclosure agreements, they have worked to limit the public's knowledge of its existence. This is a template that has developed throughout the country as developers are pushing at a frantic rate to be ahead of the pack in a line for a data center development. Through research, outreach to other data center communities, attendance at Farmington public meetings and state legislator committee hearings, I have come to see the realities of what hyperscale data centers are and what they are not. My concern about changes in quality of life, which happen in other communities and in other states where hyperscalers have proliferated, is what brought me out of my peaceful retirement from classroom teaching to this amazingly talented, to lead this amazingly talented and diverse group of people. When a very few residents received a notice about a public meeting to propose a zoning change that would allow a technology park to come to their backyards, forward-thinking neighbors passed out our own notices, met in parks, exchanged emails, and our coalition was born. We packed the first Planning Commission meeting with a standing room only crowd almost 1.5 years ago, and it's been an uphill battle, but we've been in there ever since. It's not just our neighborhood that's at risk. As you will hear tonight, the existence of hyperscale data centers has a long arm of reach, with implications for just our community, but for the county and for the state and beyond. Just today, I turned on the radio to an NPR program this morning that was an interview of Helena Bolzer. She is chair of the Alliance for the Great Lakes. This group mentors the water in the Great Lakes region and is sounding the alarm with data centers as the primary concern, concerning especially groundwater depletion. I hope that you will visit our informational table for lots of research that will back up everything that you hear tonight. And at the same time, the Women's Minnesota Press has a table. They have a great series on energy in their August edition in which data centers are highlighted and issues are available on their table as well. You're going to notice from our title that we're not opposed to all data centers. The words responsible and development are key. When the public's comments and pleas fell on deaf ears at our local government level, our nonpartisan group turned to our state officials for protection from developers who want to come into our state and determine the parameters for Minnesota's resources, our land use, our quality of life. It was Tract Land Development of Colorado who decided that it was generous of them to come and build 50 to 80 foot tall buildings, just 250 feet from people's residential homes. People who've lived there for almost 50 years, who were guaranteed by our comp plan that it was going to be a residential development. They determined those parameters, not our local government, not our state government. The developer is calling the shots, and that's well documented in interviews with city officials in the paper. I've testified 7 times this past legislative session, met individually with 4 senators, the Attorney General, the top aide to Governor Walz, and my message has not changed. Don't think that Minnesota is any different from other places where data centers have proliferated. Minnesota is in the infancy in the data center world. Places like Virginia, Georgia, Indiana, way ahead of us. We have the luxury of learning from other states what their reality has been. It seems that our legislators did not accomplish that goal in a very meaningful way, and there is much left to be done toward the end, responsible development. That's also why our coalition, along with Castle Rock Township, have filed suit against the city of Farmington. Our case in Farmington will be impact litigation, which could ultimately force these billionaires who want to build data centers in Minnesota to play by our rules and not the other way around. Thank you, and please consider joining our fight. We'll have more on that later in the evening. And at this time, Mikki Morrissette from the Minnesota Women's Press.
I'm short. Okay. Am I good? Sort of? Yeah, I'm going. All right, thank you. So, are you good? Okay. Hi, welcome everybody. My name is Mikki Morrissette. I am the publisher and editor of Minnesota Women's Press. I'm going to apologize right off the bat that if I get a little brain foggy, I just got in at midnight last night from a trip with my son across the country from Oregon, and I'm still a little off kilter. So anyway, but I'm going to do my best to moderate a discussion today about something we've been writing about. Diane, who's over here, we knew we were doing an August issue about energy, and we thought there's something going on about data centers, but I don't really know anything about it, and she didn't know anything about it, and we didn't even know who the sources might be for a story. So it evolved from there. Diane found out about a couple things, including the fact that this coalition exists, and then that became a big story that we have online. A snapshot of it is in our issue, the energy issue that Cathy mentioned, which is on our table over there. And then we have another story in the September issue from Diane about what it's like to be in the middle of a grassroots movement, in the living rooms, really planning things, because there's a lot of community building that's been around this, and so she kind of captures what that's like. as a journalist who's supposed to be on the outside, but also cares about the issues that are being discussed, and it's always a kind of a murky area with journalists who have hearts and minds. So anyway, so we've got another story on that, and then from tonight's discussion, which very much is going to be coming from questions that you have, as well as what the featured participants here have to say. We're going to be doing several additional stories. Diane's recent story got picked up by the Star Tribune, and we're, just again trying to make sure that more people are aware of how this can impact Minnesota, and are there ways to make it work better for Minnesota citizens. I did talk to one person who's involved in infrastructure who thought, well, we could be building things underground here, geothermal, you wouldn't have to do as many things with electricity. But again, nobody really knows a lot of some of those answers, because there's been other ways of people doing things the way they do things. So anyway, I just want to introduce everybody who's going to come up here one at a time and give 3 minutes of kind of who they are, what role they've had in this issue to date, and what it is that concerns them about data centers, or what their thoughts are on how it could be done really differently. And so I'm going to bring everybody up individually, but I realize it's stupid for me to bring everybody up as I stand up here, so I'm going to just say, Mo, you're going first in the alphabet, and then we're going to go to Bill, and then we're going to go to Sierrra, if you can kind of remember this, then we're going to go to Drew, and then we're going to go to Patricia, and then we're going to go to Peter. And I'm going to sit down and listen and learn as well. Thank you. Really close to the mic.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mo Feshami. I have an extensive IT background, and more than half of that I spent as a telecommunication and data network architect for large companies, Fortune 500 companies.
I'm sorry.
And no problem. So I understand how data centers are built, and also with cloud service providers like Amazon, Microsoft, Google. I live right next to this proposed data center in Farmington. And so when I first heard of it, it was called the Technology Park, and I had no idea what it was. Then I found that it was a data center, and I thought it would be one of the legacy data centers that I knew about. So I was happy, actually, because our school taxes won't go up, traffic won't be bad. Till I went to the first hearing and found out it is a hyperscale data center. It is probably 1,000 times bigger than the kind of stuff I was familiar with. So hyperscale data centers are very, very different than what we know about, what most of our legislators know about. So that's why I joined the coalition, as I realized the significant impact of these data centers, not only to our water, not only to our environment, but also with a lot of the tax giveaways that the state is giving them to incentivize them to coming into our state at a time where we're cutting services. That was an additional incentive for me to do everything I can to use my technical background to educate people on potential significant impacts if these data centers are not done properly. Again, as Cathy said, our organization is not against data centers, but if you're going to do it the right way. We have Boundary Waters. When they were doing mining or they were doing other activities, we made them to clean the environment. That's a treasure that somebody years ago thought about and forced the industry to protect. That's what we have to do now. It's okay, come in, business is good, making profit is good, but don't do it at the expense of everyday neighbors that live around you. Thank you very much.
That may not go any higher.
As long as it goes lower.
I could.
Hi, everybody. My name is Senator Bill Lieske. I represent the Farmington area, but I live in Lonsdale myself. Represent a very large district. I always say it's the last metro/suburban district, and it does turn into a rural district as we get further south. It's actually a pretty good cross section of the entire state of Minnesota, which I really enjoy representing. I first got involved. I got a phone call from actually Representative Roach. It was the first phone call I got, and then I got a bunch more from the community as they found out about what was going on. I got a call from Drew, and he said, "Have you heard about this data center?" And I said, "Well, I knew there was a data center coming. They'd been to my office the year prior just to let me know like there was data centers coming, and that was the discussion. They didn't tell me what it was. They just told me, hey, we're going to be building some stuff in your district, just letting you know." And that was about as far as the discussion went. So I assumed, okay, well, we knew Meta was having their data center up in Rosemount, which is also in our district. Talked to them about it. They had a good plan. It wasn't great. I mean, obviously the community was very concerned about water usage, things like that. Meta actually brought in multiple different ways of explaining how they were going to change what the overall use of water looked like. Are they perfect? No, but are they much better than what the original plan was? Yes, and that's because they do take it seriously as to what the impacts are on the environment. Fast forward to this data center, and I was told it was going to be similar. So I said, okay, well, if they're going to fill out the same type of work, they're going to do the same kind of space. This area, as we all can see on the map, is a very large space. It will cover much more acreage than what the data center for Meta was. So I was okay. Well, let's talk through it. Let's understand it. Well, then I started watching city council meetings because I didn't have time to get up here in time from work, but I did sit and watch the live streams so that way I could at least understand what was going on. And I watched and I listened and I learned that the local government wasn't listening. And that was the number one concern I had. I saw all the people asking for help and no one was listening. And so when I got phone calls asking for help, I wanted to be that guy, the guy that listened, the guy that took the next step to understand what was going on. And so that's what led me to Senate File 608, and Drew is the co-author in the House. I can't remember the number for the House file, 1109, I think, or something like that. With that being said, we authored that bill trying to find a way to finesse what could be an okay way of handling data centers, because I'm not opposed to data centers. That's the first thing that I always am very clear with, as is the coalition. It's very important to understand that we don't dislike data centers because we all know we use them. The problem is where they go and how they affect people. That's the problem. And that's the situation that we're all fighting for, and that's why we're all here, I believe, tonight, is how they're going to affect the people that live in the area. And so with that, I developed this bill with help with Representative Roach. We worked together, and we finessed how it was going to work. And it's all data centers over 800,000 square feet. The reason why is Meta, again, falls under that number. But this data center is much larger. We're talking 2.5 million square feet. That's a lot different. And the amount of water they're going to use is obviously significantly different because of the size of the computer systems. So with that being said, that's where we started. And so I introduced a bill, got it to be very bipartisan. I myself, very conservative individual, but I also worked with Senator McQuaid and Senator McEwen, who are on the opposite side of the aisle and on the opposite side of their party compared to where I stand. And it's because this issue is not a partisan issue. This is a people issue. And so that's why I'm here. That's why I'm here to answer questions about how it would work, how those things would go. And I appreciate all of you showing up to represent yourselves and your community members. Thank you.
All right. Oh, there we go. All right. I do speak a little quietly, so I'm going to try my best to project. I hear it's a little quiet in the back there. So, hi, everybody. My name is Sierrra Mooradian. I'm the Government Relations and Policy Director for CURE. CURE is a rurally based nonprofit dedicated to protecting and restoring resilient towns and landscapes by harnessing the power of the people who care about them. Our offices are actually out in far western Minnesota in Montevideo, but we have staff in the whole state, and we work across the state. So we actually got involved in the legislative discussions around data centers through a docket at the Public Utilities Commission. So back in December of 2024, Amazon approached the Public Utilities Commission to ask for an exemption to the Certificate of Need process for its emergency backup generation for a proposed data center up in Becker, Minnesota. So Amazon wants to build a data center up in Becker, and they said that they would need up to 600 megawatts of emergency backup generation, which for those who like me before I got into my current role, have no clue how much energy that is. It's about the size of the Monticello nuclear plant. So think of something about the size of a power plant. That's how much energy we're talking about. So Kira got involved, said, we don't think you should be exempt from kind of the review processes of something that large, especially something that's being operated, that would be operated on diesel. And so engaged the Public Utilities Commission. The Public Utilities Commission ended up agreeing that no, Amazon cannot get that exemption. And then Amazon went to the legislature and they said, well, we'd really like this exemption. Can you just put it into law? So again, we showed up at the legislature saying, actually what they're trying to do is get that exemption over at the Public Utilities Commission. So please, legislature, don't just let them kind of do this and run around the state agency that's in charge of exactly this type of thing. That kind of snowballed into all the other data center bills that we saw last year. So tax extending or kind of changing the language around sales tax exemptions for hyperscale data centers. And then all sorts of language about, or what we didn't see in terms of water use, energy use, siting. So how close can a data center be for residential areas? How tall can buildings be? Are there noise concerns, lighting concerns, all those kinds of things. So we participated in a lot of those hearings. For those who were tuned in, probably saw me a lot there. But kind of just in short, to sum up, what Kira's most concerned about is the lack of transparency that we're seeing, especially when it comes to energy and water use, combined with who's able to make these decisions, or more accurately, who's being kept out of the decision-making process. So that's my brief intro. Thank you.
Good evening. I appreciate the invite to be here. My name is Drew Roach, representative of House District 58B. And Bill kind of touched it a little bit of kind of how I got involved. I live in Farmington, resident of Farmington, represent the city of Farmington. And, you know, I was aware of this proposal back in early summer last year, and actually signed some of the paperwork that was going around to try to stop this and get people involved and educated on this proposal. Started going to the Planning Commission and the council meetings and seeing just how lack of transparency there was with the mayor and the city council of Farmington, not communicating with the residents exactly what their plan was and what they were bringing to the community. I'm definitely for the open market and you know, and would never try to step on the property owners of the property to sell their property to whoever they want to, right? It's a free market. But when it affects other people, and when you have a council that is trying to, you know, shove a proposal in an area that it doesn't belong, you know, it's not right. And this, for me, was just a matter of principle. If I live pretty close to it, it doesn't affect my exact neighborhood. I'm not having to look at it in my backyard, but people in my community will be affected. The stakeholders of the community, people, as Cathy said, some people that have lived there for 50 years. And they should have a say as well. And the way the council went about and the planning commission went about proposing this job and approving this job did not take into account the people that were the most affected by it. That really is what really got me motivated and really got me frustrated in this process, and how there was just a complete lack of transparency and honesty with the public. Before one of the planning commissions, I personally was intimidated by an employee, a staff member of Farmington, to not show up. You know, who am I to show up and be against a proposal that's going to bring so much benefit to the community, right? The people that are complaining about this don't even live in Farmington. That's absurd. I know some of the people. I've talked to them. They most certainly live in Farmington. They're stakeholders. They're property owners. They've been invested. They're business owners. Their kids live here. They should have a say. Listen to their voice. As many people have said, we're not anti-data center. We're just about doing things the right way, being respectful, being honorable, and listening to the people. I take very take great pride in standing on principle and defending the rights of property owners and people in my community, and I'm happy and privileged to be able to do whatever I can at the legislature to move forward with whatever legislation we can get that will help communities like Farmington that are going through these things. They shouldn't. So that's kind of how I got involved and how I will continue to be involved moving forward, doing whatever I can for not only our community to try to create answers and get some resolve out of this, but others as well. So I appreciate it.
Well, good evening. I am delighted to be here. What a good space and what a good group. And I'm very hopeful. I served in the Senate for 16 years, and we are really in the opposite end of how we think about policy. I'm a very liberal Democrat. And I get a lot of hope when I hear your senator and your representative here speaking the language that I really want to hear, which is they value you, they want to represent your voices, and they want to make sure that they speak for you at the Capitol. That is where we share a lot of value, and I have a lot of respect for what you just said. I want to tell you a little bit about some of the work that we're doing with Interfaith Power and Light, with congregations and people like you, to really become more involved in this area and really understand your power. It just so happened that we have a divided legislature where one of your members could make all the difference in both the House and the Senate, because one member in the House could take a vote that will change the outcome, right? We have 134 members divided in 67, and then we have one vote difference in the Senate. So your senator could make all the difference in creating policy and taking the direction in the Minnesota Senate. What I am going to tell you is that unfortunately, the companies that are lobbying for these data centers have people that are very well paid. I serve in the Senate, and now I am working with organizations that are doing advocacy at the Capitol. The average salary for a person that works at the Capitol on behalf of these organizations, if they are well paid, they are probably making $60,000. The lobbyists for these organizations are probably making $350,000 a year. Well, they were at the Capitol in big numbers, and they were paid to be there hour after hour lobbying your representatives. Well, who is paying the lobbyists for you? You have no, can you hear me now? Sorry, I'm far from it. So you really don't have the funding. I don't know what is the funding for this coalition. Do you have a budget? I just want to hear it.
No, we're folks, we don't have a tax base.
You don't have a tax base, and you don't have a contributor, or you don't have a company that is paying you to do this work. So your representatives are doing the work on your behalf. So please understand what is happening at the Capitol. The people that are representing these companies that are being paid every single day make a lot of money. Your representatives are hearing directly from you. You don't have these lobbyists representing you. The other thing that I really would like you to know about is about the Public Utilities Commission. The Public Utilities Commission is also making these decisions on your behalf with your representatives. I encourage you to look at what they do and how they approve these projects. I just want a show of hands. Who in this audience know about the Public Utilities Commission? Oh, well, thank you. This is an educated community, and I am just so happy to see it, because this is exactly what we need. So you will be subsidizing when you approve these projects, and I really want you to look into the cost of this and talk to your representatives ultimately about the cost. We talk about the use of water a lot, but I want you to really ask your representatives and these companies not just about the use of water, but also building roads and the infrastructure to get to these facilities. Every activity related to their business is subsidized by you. Actually, taxpayers will pay for this. Your water bill will go up. your electrical bill will go up. You will be paying for the recycling of electronics and every product that they use. And so your utilities bill, what you pay for garbage and for waste, it's gonna go up because all of, disposing of all of these electronics is actually very, very expensive. Also, I want you to think about, really at the end of the day, this conversation that you have with your city council members and with your mayor. It's going to dictate how you implement changes in the land and water use and how they connect with your state representatives matters a great deal. So it's time to get involved, and you are here, and I have great hope that this will be an example for the state of Minnesota where other communities will follow your example, will get organized, will connect with your representatives to make sure that we do responsible policy. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for inspiring the rest of us to be here, and let's do this in every town in the state of Minnesota. Thank you so much.
Good evening. Can you hear me? I'm Peter Wagenius. I'm the legislative director of the Sierra Club North Star chapter. Sierra Club is a national organization, the nation's oldest and largest grassroots environmental organization. We have 80,000 members and supporters in Minnesota helping us protect clean air and clean water. Tonight, I want to encourage you to be strong, to be maximally assertive in defense of your community. Part of how you do that at the city council, at the state legislature, part of how you do that is by not letting anybody make you less effective by putting you into some kind of ideological box. Oftentimes, debates at the legislature over issues like this push people to pick a box, to be either for environmental and public health protections or to say, no, we can't impose restrictions on private businesses operating in the free market. Don't let anybody box you in like that by remembering this. We are not dealing with this situation because businesses are operating in the free market. Data centers are coming here to Minnesota because they are getting massive taxpayer subsidies from the state of Minnesota. Knowing that should liberate you. It should liberate you because no matter what your politics are, we have a right to attach conditions to that money, to those subsidies. Also, this is part of how we were able to push back. One of the first decisions we made, Sierrra, Cathy, I, when we were meeting back in January, is we're never going to let them forget, legislators, we're never going to let them forget that these data centers are deeply subsidized by Minnesota taxpayers. We didn't win all the protections that you deserve, but we did prevent big tech from getting some of the exemptions from environmental rules they were seeking. We also made them pay for their electricity. Do you know that? They had exemptions. They didn't have to pay for their electricity like we all do, but now they do. Now they have to pay for their electricity like the rest of us. And we did that by never letting legislators forget this is not a free market, this is about subsidies. It won't surprise you that being from an environmental organization, I support strong protections for the public from many different polluters. But you don't need to be anything like me to be pissed off about this. Here's what we said at the Capitol, and it worked. Minnesota's data center tax credit is an automatic, uncapped corporate giveaway that has already cost Minnesota taxpayers over $350 million. By the way, when it was originally passed in 2011, it was estimated to cost just $5 million annually. But the program has since then ballooned to over $110 million a year. And as these centers proliferate across the state, the cost to us taxpayers will skyrocket unless the legislature acts. And who are we subsidizing? Not Minnesotans struggling to afford their lives, but the wealthiest corporations in human history. Amazon, Google, Microsoft, they do not need our tax dollars. But until it's repealed, the data center tax credit is current law. That means whether you're on the left or the right, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, or independent, you have a right to expect something in return for that money. whether it's the city council or state agencies, whomever is negotiating at a table with data centers, demand the answer. Are they being good negotiators on your behalf or not? Are they fully representing your interests or not? We can only rely on data center owners to do what what we require them to do by passing laws and by enforcing those laws. And since we're giving them state money, no matter where we are in the state, no matter where in the state they want to locate, the state should require them to be good citizens and good neighbors. Thanks.
So I have a couple questions that I'll be asking as follow-ups to what we've just heard, and a couple things that weren't actually brought up yet. But I also want to start by having people in the audience with the microphones that can be handed around. I know Brady's got one, Gary's got one. To be able to ask what you want to ask, and then at a certain point, I'm going to follow up with anything that hasn't been brought up. And then we're going to open it up at the end as well to kind of action step options. So yeah, does anybody want to start off with a question? And if not, I will, but you know, I'm always asking questions.
Sure. I'll ask a question.
Okay.
Where do you think, or what should the policy for NDAs be? Should city officials and staff be allowed to sign NDAs and work behind the scene with the developer before the public ever knows what's going on?
I'll just say that was one of our biggest disappointments of the session. From a Sierra Club standpoint, they should not be allowed to have NDAs. There is sometimes an appropriate, I used to work in city level government, and there's sometimes appropriate roles for non-disclosure agreements on personnel matters. If a city has to part company with a department head and they're by sharing information that's personal or personnel information, it would expose the city to litigation. There are some places where non-disclosure agreements are appropriate, but it's very limited. And it should not allow for us not to know how much electricity is being used, not to know how much water is being used, not to know the impacts of water depletion, water pollution. All of that needs to be public information everywhere in the state.
I actually totally agree with that comment. There are some areas where it is applicable, but by and large part, specifically on the Farmington project and how this was handled and the NDAs that were signed there, I plan on bringing legislation that will remove that ability. And I've already talked to many members on both sides of the aisle. It will be a co-sponsored bill, so it will be a bipartisan bill. So I look forward to bringing that this next session. But Gary, to answer your question, no, it does not belong. We should have full transparency and honesty as an elected official at any level. You should be able to be transparent and honest with the community and what you're doing. Period.
Yeah.
I actually related to that, and when Diane first did the story, we learned that the city had signed these non-disclosure agreements. And Drew, I guess I'll ask you to respond. Why are NDAs? What do you think is the use of having these companies asking city councils to sign NDAs? Why are they doing that?
Well, I'm sure there's many of reasons. I don't want to put motive specifically on this specific reason, but I'm sure it is to cover up some specifics on the project. I think it's also to potentially to prevent the council from shopping that to other like-minded companies that they could potentially leverage that conversation, with other competitors to try to get in a better deal. But why specifically? It's kind of for them to answer. I just know personally that that's not something that should be, to their disposal.
let me just add one more thing. I totally agree with Representative's comments. This is a nationwide phenomenon. One of the benefits of being part of the North Star chapter, the Minnesota chapter of Sierra Club, is I talk to other chapters all around the country. And they're seeking NDAs. Big tech companies are seeking NDAs everywhere. It's a broad-based problem. And I just want you all to appreciate just how ridiculous this got at the state capitol this year. There were times when legislators said, I would like some, they're in a room, they're in a conference room, they're having a hearing about a data center bill, and a legislator would say, hey, can somebody from the company come up and speak to this? And they refused to come up and talk about it. At one point, they claimed in a meeting that how much energy they were using, how much water they were using had national security implications. Give me a break. They just don't want us to know. Don't ever fall for any of that. All of that information, especially as it relates to water and electricity, which affects our electricity bills, our ability to use water, agriculture's ability to use water to irrigate their crops, all of that is affected. And so we need to have all that information. It is a nationwide phenomenon. And Minnesota, generally speaking, is known for having more transparent government, for having open data laws, and they need to be updated to include this.
Piggybacking on what Peter said, if it was a matter of national security, all you have to do is go look at Google Maps. You would see the size of the data center. They usually don't make it any bigger than they have to. The size is to accommodate all the electronics that go in there. So you can look at the size that's available, and you can look at the cooling they use. That's also shown in Google Maps. So if some bad actors or other countries that have ill intent toward ours wants to know what's going on, they can easily do that. They have agencies that keep track of all of that, the same way we do, that we keep track of other countries' infrastructure. So claiming that our water use, our energy use is a matter of national security is alternative fact. It is not true. If somebody wants to do that, the way I collected my information, by going to AUARs that the projects publish, and it's 300-400 pages. I go through, I know the keywords, I go through that, and I figure all that information. So it is to keep as much information out of the public eye. Maybe if they're trying to buy a piece of property, they want to get better price by not saying who the purchaser is, and they usually create a new company and go to local developers and get them to buy it for them anyway. So in my humble opinion, there really is no reason to have these non-disclosures. It just keeps the public unaware of what's going on, and when they start asking questions, they're being told, sorry, we can't tell you because we signed this non-disclosure.
Other questions?
I got one over here. Yeah, this is for our legislators. The resulting bill, HF 16, that came out of the special session, didn't have any location restrictions. Why did that occur, do you know?
All right, first I'm going to repeat the question because I heard some people didn't hear it. The question was basically around siting and location requirements. So Senate File 608, that was my bill. It was the only bill that was introduced, as far as I know, that had specific just location requirements. I know there was some that came with environmental and things like that that also had location requirements. So you would think that the bill that would be most simple would be the most likely to make it into this omnibus bill that was created. What happened is I asked multiple weeks before the end of session, regular session, can we talk about my bill? With the authors that I knew were going to be designing the bill that ended up being what passed. And I was told, not right now. The week before special session happened, I get a phone call. Hey, can we talk about your bill? well, yeah, I'd love to talk to you about my bill, but why didn't we do this during normal session? Why are we doing it off hours? Why are we doing this? And the response was, well, we didn't think we needed it, but now we might need it. Okay, what does might need it mean? I guess I don't understand. And the answer I got was they were using it as a bargaining chip. And this is what happens behind closed doors. The legislature, the thing that frustrates me the most, because I represent you, the people, I don't represent my own special interests. I don't represent special interests of whoever donates to my campaign. I represent you, all of you out here. And so I don't generally get pulled into the closed door meetings because I refuse to negotiate behind closed doors. I'm a transparent person. And so what ended up happening is they used the citing to negotiate that out of the bill so that they could negotiate another part out of the bill. So it ended up being a jockeying situation. And so that's what happened. That's the reality of what happened. And the reason why is that our citing bill, my bill specifically, was not liked by everybody. And it wasn't liked by everybody in a bipartisan manner just as much as it was liked by people in a bipartisan manner. And different reasons for different purposes, right? So my colleagues on my side of the aisle, the number one reason was it was taking away local control. That was the argument I got back. The argument from the other side is we need infrastructure, we need jobs, we need things for union workers to do. This is a good union working job, we need this to be here. That's the two arguments I was given. So to answer your question, I don't know why it didn't succeed, other than that I have a feeling, and I'm told it was because of jockeying, arguing back and forth, and it got pulled out. Thank you.
I'll just be a little bit more blunt about that as well. And I think the former senator kind of nailed it on the head earlier. In large part of the reason why that wasn't put in that bill is, well, first of all, that data center bill that was brought forward was never a discussion at a large scale in committees, right? That was a bill, an omnibus bill that was created before the special session, behind closed doors, by lobbyists and other special interest groups that weren't representing you. And so that is partly in large why it didn't have some of those provisions in it, because it wasn't necessarily for the benefit of the people, but some of these large corporations that were benefiting from it.
As a follow-up, Patty Acomb, I think, was presenting the bill during the special session, or at least had some words about it, and she said that the next session, which is a policy session, that the location provision would be brought up there. Is that realistic based on kind of the union jobs kind of perspective on it? Like, does that have any chance at all?
So I'll speak on the House side. We had some issues within the House that delayed some of the ability to have committee hearings and have that heard in committee. I have been talked with a number of chairs that have told me that I will have a hearing on that, on my specific bill in the House. How that will move forward in the Senate, I let Bill touch on that. Yeah, there are some roadblocks that prevent some of those conversations from happening, and one of the, in large part, it's lobbying firms. You have the chamber that's a large lobbying firm that has got heavy weight around the Capitol that pushes back against our legislation as well as labor. When these proposals come forward and they have union jobs. That create a lot of jobs in the interim, you get a lot of pushback. So it'll be an uphill battle, but something that I'm looking forward to being able to present and have some discussions in committee.
All right, so from the Senate perspective, I'll give you a different angle. The reason why we go back and forth between the House and the Senate is because the two bodies, whilst we have to work together and agree to something at the end, we work very independently during session. I had a hearing scheduled. We were 2 days out. It had been scheduled for about a week. And all of a sudden, a bunch of names started appearing on testifiers. And what that normally means is that either A, they're in support of the bill, which was the hope, or they're opposed to the bill. And when I saw those names appearing to testify for or against the bill, I knew right away that it was mostly against. because I knew who they were. I know the names, I've seen them, they're always at the Capitol. Again, they're the lobbyists that are paid a lot more money than your local legislator. I can tell you my salary because it's easy to Google search. I make $51,000 for being a state senator and roughly $10,000 in per diem. I live at 49.5 miles from the state capitol, which means I also don't get any other money towards traveling to the capitol. So that tells you, 50 miles is the cutoff. I missed it by a half a mile. So with that being said, the important part here is I'm battling against people that make $300,000 a year, and I'm one person. And all I can do is speak for you, and I do the best I can, and I throw every hour and every ounce I can behind it. The problem that I have is that as soon as I saw those names and how much money I know each of those people represent, I knew I was in trouble. And guess what? I didn't even get a call. I actually got reached out by another lobbyist who does support our bill. He reached out to me and he came to my office and he goes, "Did you hear?" And I go, "Did I hear what?" And he goes, "Your bill's been pulled." And I said, "Nope, wasn't notified." So not only did I not know that my own bill, which had had a hearing for a week on the schedule, had been pulled from the schedule, I had found out by somebody else, not from the chief, not from the chair of the committee, not from anybody in the committee. I found out from a lobbyist who luckily was watching and was willing to inform me that my bill had been pulled. And so, are we going to hear it next year? We could. I hope so, because I hope we can get this conversation going. I think it's an important conversation to have. I also have a plan to introduce another piece of legislation very similar to the one we have, but the difference, and I know some people don't like it, but the reality is we have to get a conversation going. So whatever bill I can introduce that starts the conversation, it allows us to talk about the other bills. And so my next bill that I'm going to introduce is related to referendums. It'll allow the local control, since that was my side of the aisle's argument, it'll allow local control even more than I've ever let before. It would be a bill where you get to vote on whether that's going to be your neighbor or not. And it will go to a vote. And so that's what I'm going to intend to introduce as well, to bring new light to the argument and the decision. But at least hopefully that'll make it get a hearing. So there's my hope.
Switching gears to a water conservation note, I'm curious how much water use the hyper data centers use per day. I've been told it's 1 million gallons per day. I want to know if that's true. And then how much discharge is being put into the Mississippi River. I've heard it's 40%. 60% is cooled back through the data center. And for the individual in the middle, I forget your name, but who's done work on data centers before, Mo, can any of the discharge be used for irrigation on crops, which is the largest? We have a lot of canning crops that use irrigation here in Dakota County.
Let me speak to Farmington. What I have here is the contract that has been signed between the developer and City of Farmington. So when the full build-out capacity requested by December 31st, 2032, the water peak daily flow is 2.93 million gallons a day. That's what they've requested. Now, the entire city of Farmington on an average day uses less than that, 2.3 million gallons, and they are requesting 2.93, almost, 1 million gallon more. Now, the sanitary peak daily flow would be 2.34 million gallons a day. So basically, this is almost all of it is getting discharged. Very little is being planned to be conserved. Maybe there are some holding ponds that they would have at the facility, but based on what they have said, given to Farmington, and the Farmington city has signed this contract, there's a lot of it that's going to be discharged. So and majority of the water usage happens in the hottest days of summer, when the city asks us to preserve water. Don't water your grass, or, don't take showers every day. But that's the time when all of these data centers, the 9 or 10 that are coming to Dakota County, they're pumping all the water in the hottest of the summer days. And I'd like to add one more thing to the water conservation. There is a statute in Minnesota, statute 103G.261. It prioritizes the water usage by different kind of industries or groups. The number one priority is residential water use, which the cities control. The number two is anybody that uses less than 10,000 gallons a day. Number three is the farming. Number four is for those who produce electricity. Number five priority is for anyone that uses more than 10,000 gallons a day. So that is enforced by the state. But what happens, these data centers go to the city to apply for their water. So they do not go to DNR, they do not go to the state to say, I want this much water. In fact, if the data center buys a piece of property that already has wells on it, that will give them all the water that they need, they cap that well off and go to the closest city and ask for the city to give them the water. Why would they do that? Because then the regulation of their water use would be regulated by the local government that is looking to them to give them tax revenues, and they wouldn't cut off the water use on somebody that is giving them the revenue. So they are circumventing the law of the state by mixing their water use priority with the city's water use. Thank you.
I just want to add a couple of things. I'm really glad that Mo had the specifics about the track data center, but I think it's, because we're looking at, I think now we're up to almost a dozen that are considering, hyperscale data centers that are considering coming to Minnesota. It's important to realize that how much water really depends on the cooling technology that they're going to use. And do they tell us that up front? Bet you can guess. The answer to that is no. And part of the concerns that CURE had, that Sierra Club, others here have had this year, is that there's no requirement in the law that there's language that looks beautiful on paper that seems to say that data centers have to look at certain water saving measures. I can tell you, despite what you may be hearing from some legislators, that is not true. It is not enforceable. They are not required to use any of that. They are not even required to prove that they consider certain water saving conservation measures. And so when we're looking at millions of gallons a day, no requirements for the company to say whether they looked at a different type of technology, what technology they're using in general, that's a huge concern, especially when we're in Dakota County, like here, where there's a lot that could be happening in close proximity. And there's not these conversations about the cumulative impacts of all these data centers and their water needs happening.
I'll add to that too. I'm going to be even more blunt than Sierrra. The legislator who's been misrepresenting that that the companies are required to use those water-saving measures is Nick Friends, the senator from Mankato, who chairs the Energy Committee, who's a Democrat, by the way. As Senator Lieske indicated, these companies have power in both political parties. They donate to whoever the big tech donates to whoever they think they can pull their strings. It was extremely frustrating to us that the House and Patty Aiken was ready to do more to protect our water, but the Senate, and in this case with Senator Friends, Democrat from Mankato, was not willing to do it. I want to be really specific about what Sierrra is referring to. For many years in Minnesota, like dating back to the 90s, they realized this is Minnesota, land of 10,000 lakes. We need to protect our waters. So all of these big water users these skyscrapers in downtown Minneapolis and downtown St. Paul and elsewhere have been required for many years at this point to, for the cooling of their buildings to have what's called closed loop water systems, closed loop cooling systems. That means instead of having water flow through once for evaporative cooling, they reuse it many, many times before discharging it. That it not only benefits, it prevents water depletion, it also makes it easier for them to deal with water pollution because it's a smaller amount of water they're having to filter at the end of the process before they discharge it. If we've been requiring that for downtown Minneapolis and downtown St. Paul skyscrapers for over 20 years at this point, why would we not require that of data centers who have an even greater pull on the water system? Well, that's what we proposed. That's what Sierrra and I advocated for, that if they are using water for cooling, they should be required to use a closed loop water system. That's, go, Google this, look at the YouTube videos. They're doing it in Sweden, they're doing it all over the world, they're doing it in places in America. Why are we not requiring that here? We could, and we should. And I'll say one more thing about this. The most effective thing that you can do for this community is to ask for standards that will apply to every community. That is the most powerful thing. And I was gonna do this before the end, but I'm gonna do it now. I wanna brag about Cathy and Mo and your whole team. You have the most impressive grassroots operation of any, there's opposition bubbling up all around the state, in Hermantown and Bemidji against data centers, but you all have the most impressive operation, and here's why it's the most impressive. Your strategy is in your name, Coalition for Responsible Data Centers. It's not the Farmington NIMBY Club, it's the Coalition for Responsible Data Centers. Here's what doesn't work at the Capitol. If you went to the Capitol and said, these data centers, they cause water pollution and water depletion and they damage our electric grid, so you should put them in another community. That does not play. You have 1 out of 134 state representatives here. You have 1 out of 67 state senators here. None of the other state representatives and state senators are interested in hearing the argument that says, these are terrible if they're unregulated, so you should put them in a different community. That doesn't work. Cathy's message is really persuasive. We support data centers, we know they're part of the future, but it has to be done right, and it has to be done right everywhere. You are leading on this. Whatever you've been doing to support Cathy and her work, you should keep doing. Whatever donations you've been making, you need to keep making them, because this is how we're going to win for Farmington and for the whole state.
Thank you for those kind words, Peter. One of the things I want to talk about, because water is near and dear to my heart too, and one of the things that really motivates me to deal with this almost 40 hours a week, which is not what I planned on for retirement. I'm going to be battling weeds in my garden, and here I am. My message has always been, let's not think that Minnesota is any different from any other places where data centers have proliferated. And so here's one example. In the metropolitan area of Atlanta, and Atlanta is a huge hub, when Northern Virginia is getting saturated, it seems like Atlanta became the next place where large data centers proliferated. The legislature passed bonding, or however that happens, I'm not a politician, and bonding was passed and a reservoir was built that was supposed to guarantee the water supply for metropolitan Atlanta for 50 years. It took over 10 years to get all of the paperwork in place to even permit this, the building of this reservoir. Well, now in come hyperscale data centers, and all of a sudden the legislature has to say, whoops, sorry folks, we can only guarantee this reservoir for 10 years. Well, it took that long to get the bonding in the first place. Now what's metropolitan Atlanta gonna do? Story after story is in the research, and my husband Gary has done a fabulous job of taking articles of that are research-based, catalog them by category, jobs, water, electricity, and it's on our website, so educate yourself. Water is one of the major problems with data centers. Wells are going dry, and it doesn't happen with the first building in a build-out situation. it's at full tilt when these data center campuses are developed, that we begin to realize, oh, no, now what are we gonna do? It's happening all over. In Elko, we have Janelle here from Elko, who's kind of the Aaron Brockovich of Elko with regard to the Niagara bottling down there. They use that same loophole, by the way, that Mo was talking about. They went Elko, first annexed land in the middle of Newmarket Township. Then they went to the city of Elko, the Niagara subsidiary of Nestle's biggest food company in the world, went to Elko and said, we need you to supply the water. And they did. There are 75 unanswered complaints of damage that has happened to homes in the surrounding area, mostly private well owners, 75 unanswered people who've had to replace whole water softening systems, appliances, major plumbing problems in their homes. Most of it happened during the water testing period, but that was supposed to be guaranteed, and neither the Minnesota Department of Health nor the DNR has any spine to back those people. They just turn it back. Your city administrator, maybe you want to talk about it a little bit.
Well, I'll just say I'm one of those well owners, and the way the Minnesota Department of Health and the DNR handled it was they made it the city's responsibility to clean up our wells, which means the citizens that live in Elko New Market, their taxpayer dollars are supposed to pay for putting in water softener systems into our, so it was actually listed as a condition on the permit. However, 21 months has went by, and we have yet to hear from the city about how these complaints are going to be handled. The Niagara water bottling plant is not up and fully running yet. It will be shortly, and they're already pushing the city for another permit. The first permit tripled the city's water use. The second permit will triple it again. So it does circumvent municipal or domestic water use.
Yeah.
Having these permits go through the city. And the city may look at it as a form of money for their water funds, for their treatment centers. But I will tell you this, when Elko New Market originally was looking at having Niagara come in, they estimated that they would need to put $9 to $12 million of infrastructure into place to support this amount of water being pumped. That amount is now up to 25 million. They need a new well, they need a new water tower, they need more water treatment.
And who's going to pay for that?
The people of Elko New Market are going to be paying for that.
That's the Kool-Aid.
And the people that live in the township with private wells have absolutely no protection. There's no protection. There's 8,000 wells in Dakota County, and there's 6,000 wells in Scott County. So there's 14,600 wells, and there probably are going to be problems. We've spoke to several hydrologists that know the geology of the area. And so if you own a private well, you're probably going to see some issues. So we really need some regional planning. And so I'm looking at these legislators over there. You want to introduce a bill? We need regional water planning. We are going to have problems. They're already here.
Janelle, let me ask you a quick question. How much is Nestle paying for their water?
1/3 of what the residents are paying.
Plastic water over there. Nestle's paid 1/3 what the people pay for the water.
So I'm going to answer a little bit about what you brought up. So Senate File 608 does have a conditional use permit authorization, so it actually would require regional planning. It would require them not to only go to the city and talk about the zoning properties and having it being in an industrial only zone, not a mixed use zone, but it would also require approval from the DNR, the state, the PUC, I think is part of it, the Public Utilities Committee, and it would require the Met Council to approve their water usage. So it does actually have it already in the bill. So that's something that is in there, so I agree with you. That was something that we did talk about, so it is in there. So, thank you.
You're talking to somebody with limited hearing. I didn't hear what you just said.
We have another question here.
Let me just finish real quick what I was just going to say. How does it impact other communities? It couldn't have been more timely when I woke up this morning on National Public Radio and listened to the article, the podcast about the Alliance for the Great Lakes, because they brought out this same, she called it a quirk, I call it a loophole, allowing industrial water users to apply to cities to get their water permit. I would like to see the legislature, or however it can happen, require that they apply for their own permits. There's no way that a data center should have the right to go to a city and ask for the water. They need to apply for their own permits. She also pointed out in this same article, if you are thinking about it, the things that are at risk with water being depleted. And don't be at rest if you get city water, if you live in an area where you don't have a private back well, because 90% of the water from Dakota County comes out of a well, whether it's a domestic well or a city well. We're all on wells. But one of the things that they said is that what's at risk are residential water supply for small businesses and the development of businesses to come to a community, and food production. So John White, the NPR commentator, goes, well, are we talking like 5, 10, 15 years from now? And the answer was no, we're talking about right now. That's what's at risk. In Detroit, Columbus, help me out here, Milwaukee, Little Rock or something like that, Minnesota, the aquifers that feed the domestic water supplies to those cities are already declining in a measurable way. So we are not talking about something that we can take lightly. That's why I was so happy when we could have this meeting here, and we're looking at nature, and we have to think, we cannot take this for granted. The water, the power, we must sustain what we've got. We have to think, as Virgil Wind from the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe said, we are borrowing this water from our grandchildren. It's not ours. And we need to really think about what is the responsible way. The other thing real quick that was brought up in the same article is that even if you have closed loop, you lose over 50% of the water just from evaporation. So, water's the biggie.
I actually have two questions, I guess. The first is, what do we actually know about job creation and whether they are short-term jobs for the construction of these data centers, and what about long-term? What kind of job creation is there long-term? The second question is, what are all these benefits they're selling communities on of the data center to the community? I haven't heard any yet, but what are they telling you?
Great question. Let me answer the job question. There is no doubt that they generate construction jobs. They're well-paying jobs, but they're temporary, right? As soon as it's built, the jobs go away. And if a lot of them hit at the same time, then our unions may need help from other places to bring in people to work on the data center. But what I have is, there was a meeting between TRAC, and this was to talk to the Farmington community about the number of jobs and the type of jobs they generate. I have been in the IT field since 1981. I programmed, I designed software, I did database development, I went into network architecture, and my last job, I was the chief architect for things like that happen in the data center. So I know about the jobs that are in there. So they claim that there'll be 275 permanent jobs with an average salary of $100,000. So when I look at the type of jobs they have, network engineers, majority of those people aren't in the data center. Computer programmers, We don't even let them outside of a data center. Some of them work from home. They never, ever go inside of a data center. Computer support specialist, maybe if they have to go and touch or replace a part on a computer equipment, they may go in. Database administrator, never, ever they go there. Computer research scientist, no. Security, yes, if they're guards that walk the ground, they have drones that monitor, so there are not too many of those. HVAC, yes, you need contractors to build them, and electricians, yes, but these are such high voltages that your average Farmington technician wouldn't even touch it. You're talking thousands of volts. You have to have special gear. You know, the gloves they wear cost like $500-600, so they don't get electrocuted. And usually they go two people in case something happens, the other person can rescue the first one. So honestly, they don't generate very many jobs post-construction.
Hi, I had a question going back
Could I
to
ask the
the
second
waste
question?
management of these.
The second half of that question was about, what is their appeal beyond jobs? And their appeal is property tax base. And I just want us to sit with I go so far as to call it a shell game. So individual communities might say, hey, great, we have a property that is not generating property tax, and the data center arrives, and then they achieve property tax base for that one community. But the state as a whole, as I indicated, has spent $350 million in order to bring them here. So they play communities off against each other. They play states off against each other for both water and electricity and for subsidies.
While I was at the county fair, a friend of mine that is a director for our local in Farmington 5-star nursing home, our Farmington Healthcare Campus, Trinity, came up and talked to me, and she was just bemoaning the fact that because of the state budget cuts, Farmington's nursing home has to cut $850,000 per year out of their budget, and they don't know how they're going to do it. They don't know how they're going to maintain that 5-star quality of care that we in Farmington have gotten so used to. And I'm sure there's people in the audience here, maybe who have a relative who uses special ed services, or maybe some of us that live out this way only wished that public transit could come a little bit further south in Dakota County. Well, none of that's going to happen because the money wasn't there in the budget this year, and those are some of the cuts that happened. Now play that against the property tax that is supposedly going to be coming into Farmington. At those same public meetings, the mayor and the group from Tract said, it'll be about $500,000 a year that you're going to garnish, you're going to be able to get from property taxes. But we have to cut $850,000 from our local nursing home. Mo, in some of his research, has looked at the ratio between property tax coming into the state and sales tax coming into the state. For every $1 of property tax that comes into the state, it's something like $15 of sales tax that comes in. So if we're going to forgive all this sales tax to billionaires like Bezos and Zuckerberg and just give a blank check to them so that they can write off the taxes for whatever development they want to do for their own personal profit, Farmington might have some benefit from that, but it seems to me that the entire state's going to pay for it. So how's that going to play out? How's that going to play out? How long is it going to be before other states start saying, or other cities start saying, wait a minute, I want a little piece of this. It's our state, we're all paying the state taxes, and the ratio is so backwards. What business can survive when you only make $1 for every, well, let's say the ratio's off. Let's say it's 10 to 1. Let's say you only make $1 for every $10 that you have to invest. That to me, sounds like bankruptcy.
Can I pause us for a moment, please? We are getting backed up on questions, so out of respect for people getting their questions answered, can we try our best to stick to one person answering that question? If it's very pertinent information, don't stop yourself, get in. But to answer everybody's question, I'd like to get a raise of hands. How many people actually have a question right now as it stands? We have one back there. I think you have the mic. 2, 3, 4, 5.
These two have been waiting.
Okay, let's start with those. Jump in if you feel like you want to answer.
And I'll just give everybody a note on timing. We're getting close to 8, and I also want to have some time at the very end and for people to talk about action steps. So yeah, we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5.
Yeah, I think mine will be pretty quick. Going back to the waste, I have a question about, I know about water, I've heard about energy, but what about the electronic waste that these are going to be producing, right? I think an industry standard is every 3 years these servers, and it just keeps changing, right, as technology advances. And if that is going into our landfills, like what is that cumulative impact? Because, yeah, I haven't read or heard about that yet.
The database business is very competitive. If NVIDIA comes with the next big, most powerful chip, they have to go ahead and upgrade their equipment. Usually, the upgrades happen every 3 to 5 years for all the computers. The generators have a longer life cycle, but you know, if it's not even 5 years and a new technology comes in that compute is more powerful, all the other ones are going to ditch the old equipment and bring in the new so that they can go back to their customers and say, hey, we now have this service and come to us instead of going to our competitor. E-waste is a huge, huge problem. And it's not just the computer, it's the banks of batteries that support those computers in case of a power outage.
And I just follow up, is that included in the EIS and the things like that they have to provide? Like, is there any plan that they have to require?
I have not seen in any AUAR a disclosure of e-waste. There was only one that I saw somebody from DNR asking about that, but no, I have not seen in the 12, 13 AUAR that I've reviewed any disclosure on e-waste.
Okay. This question for Mikki or Jim, for the media here. For the media.
What's your purpose or role in covering this? What do you see or think your purpose or role should be?
I feel like you guys are our last stand of help. We need coverage on this, and we're not getting it.
Yeah, I'll start with that, and then Jim, feel free. You know, when we assigned Diane to the story, we thought, well, it's one story, but it's actually going to be at least 8 stories. And so our role is, we're also doing some conversations on an ongoing way about housing and about caregiving needs and about gender-based violence. Data centers have become on that list. It's one of those things that we're just going to keep talking about and writing about and sharing with media around the state. We're starting Minnesota Women's Press is starting a collaborative project, so we will be sharing these stories over time so that they keep getting lifted up as much as possible. And we certainly do it through social media as well, so feel free to share the stories when they come out. And then Jim, I know you have plans.
Thanks, Jeff. That's a really important question. I think media is the last stand, and I don't know, what the average person's trust is in media these days. The traditional media systems that we've all grown to trust, there's never been a lower trust in those ways of communication about communicating what the truth is. And I think with data centers, it's kind of the tip of the iceberg when it comes to how the media is covering it, because it encompasses every single thing that our government is interested in. Data centers produce the most amount of, well, they're supposed to produce the most amount of profits for billionaires that we've ever experienced. There's many trillions of dollars invested in ensuring the success of these data centers across the country, because the data centers are not really for anything that the traditional data centers are used for. They're almost exclusively used to create and train AI that the companies and the billionaires who are invested are banking on the return, meaning they're banking on the elimination of jobs. The corporate media is not going to communicate that with you. They're going to focus on water and electricity, which is really, really important because we're all going to suffer if we do not have those. But if the media apparatus is not able to have a spine and communicate the reality of these data centers and what it means for jobs, what it means for housing, healthcare, and all these other problems that are cascading as a result of not having money because you don't have jobs, because the companies and the government are putting that into not only the media, but also into the data centers, it's going to be very challenging. And so supporting independent media and supporting people who are actually impacted by these decisions is going to create a new type of trust of community members. The fact that there's a coalition of data centers is incredible because it means that we're focusing on our voices, our stories, and leveraging them to make change. And I think that's the real impact of media, is to let people know what's happening, what the truth is, and ultimately how we can join together as people who are all impacted by one thing.
I don't have a question, I have a statement I would like to bring to the legislature. It's not just for our environment, but I think it could be a problem for other neighborhoods where this data center is going to be more brought up, the question or the issue of the hazard, how 2 electricians have to be there. So there's a fire hazard. There is almost 1 fire per year per this hyperscale data center. We do not have a fire department. We have a fire department across the train. The train takes over 5 minutes to pass. Just think about it.
Doesn't sound louder to me. Well, I'm thinking in terms of activism and how heartening it was to see everyone out there doing something from Indivisible and the other No Kings sorts of things. And I was wondering whether we might create some sort of noticeable pushback, call it if you want to, or preference. So the one thing, there are 2 things. These little oracles that we're all addicted to, getting instant answers to things we don't need. If we had some sort of a agreement about putting them down that was measurable, that might be helpful, and maybe the Sierrra Club could help us countrywide. And the other thing is, could we turn out the lights and specify that we're doing it and really create, like, I don't know, dark Dakota and measure it and say, we want the lightning bugs. We don't want the data centers. Some way of being visible in our response to what's going on.
And I hope I'm not interrupting anybody else's questions, but that's actually a pretty good segue to...
Well, I guess I'm not sure.
So that's a good segue to action steps. I would love everybody featured up here to kind of talk about what they, in like a minute, a punch thing, what do they want people to do? Again, we'll be writing stories about that, but what do they want people to do? And come up when you're so inspired.
So I'm going to give you an example of what I did to get involved and get things that I found important heard, at least. I'm a chiropractor. I'm a small business owner. I like living in my small town, and I like staying quiet and private. That's what my lifestyle was up until 2020, 2021. Then I found out that things needed to change, and I wanted to advocate for that change. And how do you get involved? The first step, ask somebody who knows. Well, I happen to know now, so I can hopefully answer that question for a lot of you. You can get involved in lots of different ways, and in this case, the coalition here is one of those ways. That way, you can reach out to somebody like Cathy, who works really hard. I'm going to give her credit, absolutely. She worked really hard to get a hold of all of us. But now what I need from you, what I need from all of you from the senator's perspective, is I need you all to reach out to the chairs of the committees that are involved. We have an environment committee. Reach out to the chair of the environment committee. We have an energy committee. Senator Frentz, as we all heard, is not the most easy to work with. Reach out to him. We have a state and local government committee. Senator Zhang is the chair of that committee. Reach out to him. I need you all to reach out and explain why having the bills that we have as we're talking about them, why they need a hearing, why they need to be heard publicly, and the best way to do that is to have constituents do that for us, because in all honesty, a lot of us don't listen until the constituents bother us, and that's number one. So thank you, that's my perspective on how you guys can get involved.
Yeah, I'll kind of second what Bill said. You know, getting involved in, you know, we get a lot of emails, you know, daily as a legislator about issues. But when you get inundated time and time again, it really escalates those voices and really forces members to start having those conversations and listening to those people. So kind of what Bill said, please do that, both on the Senate and the House side. So, you know, reach out to those chairs, and you can find that easily online, and just be activated. Help support this organization. You know, Cathy and all the other members have done a fantastic job, have been fighting, you know, on a daily basis for, you know, over a year now, and they're just extremely inspiring to see them, you know, continue to put their foot on the pedal and move forward and not take no for an answer, and just continue to fight. So supporting them as much as you can is my ask going forward.
I see real hope in state policy, and I hope that we are able to learn from you, and you are inspiring a model of working to organize at the local level with your state elected officials. And the reason I say this is because I'm reflecting about the number of city council. We have 867, I believe, cities in the state of Minnesota, and I believe it's about 4,000 city council members. So it will be a daunting task if we try to do this with city councils in every city in the state of Minnesota to change, you know, kind of what is happening at the local level. But we have 67 senators and 134 representatives. So I feel like we have some hope, especially because I think we're building bipartisan support. And also, I see that when the community really understands this issue, we galvanize communities and communities engage. We are united on this issue. So I believe that we have a lot of hope in doing state policy, and I encourage you to stay focused on that and talk to your relatives and members, congregations about organizing at the state level, because I think we can correct a lot of these issues and do the right thing for this community and for the state of Minnesota. So thank you.
I won't reiterate a lot of what everybody already said, but yes, please contact your legislators. But I would also throw in the governor's office, because I won't lie, there was obviously a lot of power and a lot of pressure coming from the governor's office this year on a lot of the data center bills. So worth a shot, worth making your concerns heard there as well. And to the extent that you're able to the extent that some groups like CURE, like Minnesota Center for Environmental Advocacy, and other groups are participating at the Public Utilities Commission as these things related to data centers come up, definitely try and engage there and kind of keep in the loop. But absolutely everything everybody's already said.
A couple of quick things. I really appreciated the question you asked, and I don't have a full answer, but we spent the entire time tonight talking about the supply side of this and not the demand side. There are legitimate questions we should be talking about the demand side. there are great ways that artificial intelligence can benefit us. I can imagine what those are, and I think we're seeing some of them. But there's a massive amount of energy being used to produce videos where they put celebrities' faces on bodies of cats. I mean, like, I was reading earlier today that's just asking a question of some of the AI programs was like pouring out a glass of water, just a single question. So we actually do need to have that bigger conversation. I'm not going to try and start that now, but I want you to know that I heard you, and I'm going to convey that to other Sierra Club chapters. Like what does it mean to prioritize the uses of AI to things that are useful and not massive amounts of energy to very fleeting forms of entertainment, or cryptocurrency, which so far is really useful for criminal money laundering and not much else. Number two, stay skeptical but not cynical. We are making a difference. We did make them pay for their electricity by being tough together. Stay skeptical. I really appreciate what Sierrra said, and I'm going to add to it. A bunch of our organizations put together a website called peoplenotpolluters.com. Peoplenotpolluters.com. I encourage you to take a look at it. It doesn't help as much as it should if the only thing we do is pass laws and those laws are never enforced. Corporate polluters need to be treated like, when they break the law, they need to be treated like criminals, not like, slap on the wrist. And peoplenotpolluters.com demonstrates that whether it's a Democrat or a Republican in the governor's office, our environmental laws aren't protecting us because they're not fully enforcing those laws. The last thing, oh sorry, my screen went dark. I had one more thing. Two more things. Don't let big tech play us against each other. City versus city, state versus state. Oh, well, we'll go to this other state if you don't give us our subsidy. We'll go to this other city if you don't give us our water. Don't let them play against each other. The movement is growing. It's nationwide. You're on the leading edge in Minnesota. And the final thought is just stay involved in this great organization. I'm not kidding. I said it before. You're the leading edge. You're the most active in the state. You're a model for other communities. So stay involved in the coalition.
I'll just do a quick conclusion of my own and then hand it to the coalition. Because just to reiterate what everybody has said, between the legislators that are here, the other people that have come from other locations around the state, the reason we're here and the reason we organized here is this coalition is doing amazing things on this issue that, again, very few people know enough about yet. So that's why we're here. This is where the story is. And so I have a lot of respect for, and I'm glad Diane found the coalition because it's you're doing great work. We're very much focused on movement, grassroots types of places, and so this is why we're in Farmington.
We have one more question here.
Okay, let's do one more question.
Hello, Rick. Hello, Rick. Just one second.
Hello, Rick Thiessen here. I kind of feel like a fox in the hen house here. I'm a senior data center consultant. I've been in data centers for 30-some years, since 1987. Some things that I was looking through the brochures of information here, I flagged 3 items. Water usage, knowing that it's there, questioning, knowing, closed loop systems, that type of stuff. So that was one piece to it. The other side was 7th or 8th largest data center in the world. Just maybe do a little bit of research. There's a lot of big data centers that are out there. Mo, the information that you're provided is right on. It's right on mark. Nothing that I have to complain here. I get teased at work because I do use Google Maps to look through those white data centers. I look at their power, I look at their cooling. I do it almost every day. They make fun of me. The other side of it is the comment about your staffing. Mo was right on. I mean, they're listing data center engineers. We're not going to let them in the data center. Only the people that are there, HVAC, electricians, and it is highly specialized. It's high voltage electricians. They don't have the gloves, they have the full spark suits. When they're in the room, I'm out. Project that I'm working on is converting 3.2 megawatts of power from one old plant to a new plant. So very familiar with what's going on here. The question or the thought is really, it's a build it and they will come. In this local area, we don't have Amazon, which is more AWS. Think of it that way. We don't have Google Cloud. We don't have Microsoft, which is Azure. The companies in this area need those. Projects that I'm working on, it's tough to say, but we got to go to Chicago. We got to go to Des Moines. We have to go other places. And I work with these companies in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Western Suburbs. These are big companies that you all know of. You shop at them, you bank at them, you're insured by them. They have to go other places. So yes, I understand the responsibility aspect, fully on board. Where it's located, that's not my play here. But the big three are needed in town, because otherwise they're going to go somewhere else. AI, different story. The big hyperscalers, but cloud connectivity is needed. The companies in town are looking. They might have to look elsewhere. So just kind of think about that as well. And that's kind of what that use case for these data centers, for those clouds and those clouds connectivity, it has to be here. Internet connectivity has to go here.
on anybody.
That's not what they're used for either. They're used for AI, not cloud. We already have all the cloud tech we could ever want.
I understand. It's the cloud connectivity that we need. We need that.
I think certainly we can accomplish that cloud connectivity here. Again, we're not against data centers, but when I look at, for example, the one that is coming to Farmington or planned for Farmington at 708 megawatts, from a power perspective, is one of the largest. Size-wise, probably not one of the largest, but still, for this area is fairly significant. When you look at 10 that are planned to come into Dakota County, you know, if they build 2 of the ones, like the one in Farmington, that would support all the businesses in this area. We are a tier 2 city, we're not a tier 1 city, but when I look at 10 or 11 just in Dakota County, I like to know, why do we need so many? And then, you know, this is just the tip of the iceberg. So would there be even more coming in other communities? So it's not that we're against them. Number one is, why do we need so many? And number 2 is, do they have to go in residential areas? Put them in somewhere that they do not impact the communities surrounding the data center. So points very well taken, but I think number 1, as how many they're planning to come in, and number 2, where they're going, which is the big concern.
I have to react to what Senator Lieske was saying, Andrew Roach was saying about become active and contact your local legislators, especially the chairs of the committee. Mo and my husband Gary often went with me when I would testify 7 times this past legislative session, and their observation was during these committee hearings, when there was a lobbyist up there speaking, the legislatures kind of already knew what they were going to say. Some of them looked like they were on their cell phones or just sort of in a daze. But he said when a community member, when a constituent got up there and spoke, everybody put down whatever they were doing and they listened. And I think you're right. I think they do lean to the people. We can make a difference as individuals if we communicate with our legislature about what we need, the protections that we need with regard to how these hyperscalers are coming into our area. In conclusion, I hope this forum's given you a lot of information. I mean, it could go on for 2 more hours. I have so many stories, and I've done so much research about this. But you can't get it all in one night. And I hope that with AI on the horizon, we do have to accept the fact that data centers are going to come. Dr. Carrie Jennings, to speak to the demand side of data centers, Dr. Carrie Jennings said, think about a search which is AI generated on Google, uses about 2 cups of water, one search. It's an amazing amount of water that we need, and so that is out there. So maybe we do need to think about, do we need to be able to put celebrity faces on cats? You know, maybe we don't need to do that. But AI's coming. Where? How many of these? Who pays for them? Who regulates them? Those are things that we are yet to be determined. Our coalition has a lawsuit. It is impact legislation. We are ahead of the game, both in terms of the progression of our lawsuit, and Farmington was one of the first early proposals for data centers here in Minnesota. And we will set precedent for how billionaire developers and end users are going to be able to come into Minnesota, and who's going to establish those parameters? Who is going to make these people adhere to our clean energy goals? Who has concern for air quality and the requirements for the optimal efficiency of our water use and our power use and so forth? Who is going to have control over light pollution? Having a double fencing and a huge 250 million or whatever it is square foot buildings lit up like a high security prison 250 feet from Jeff Schottler's daughter's bedroom window. I don't think that's a good idea. Everybody I talk to can't believe it's legal. But who is going to control noise control and light control, that type of thing? Our coalition has filed suit because of the position we're in. The AUAR is inadequate for doing environmental review of these. That's what the MCEA's lawsuit is with regard to Lakeville and Mankato. We have hired Chestnut and Camboni. Our attorneys, Chris Rentz and Charles Schaefer, are dedicated and doing a great job of representing us, but it's expensive. We are hoping to merge our lawsuit with Castle Rock Township. We'll find out about that soon. We have an orderly annexation agreement that puts us in a unique position to perhaps have some backbone to make our local government accountable to us. That's why the OEA was written in the first place. But the fight's not easy, and the fight's expensive. We are entering the discovery phase of our lawsuit, and we've passed that stage where meat raffles and silent auctions can pay the bill. This is a fight that the coalition is leading for the state of Minnesota. This is not just about Farmington. This is hoping to be able to set precedent so that there are laws that govern what local governments, what developers and end users can and cannot do. So please be willing to donate. That's what we need. On our bulletin board over there is our QR code. We have our Facebook page. We have our website, nodatacenter.com. No data centers, it's not plural, nodatacenter.com.
No spaces.
With no spaces. We'll take you right to our website. We have a plethora of research. Research, by the way, on the 8th largest in the world came from an article in January of 2024, measured by kilowatt hours, by electricity. Okay, but please donate. Please be part of us. We're not in this for us in Farmington. We're in this for all of us collectively. And I would love to find a way. I'm so grateful to see people here from Egan, Apple Valley, from Faribault, from Lakeville, from Farmington, many different communities. Together we're stronger, and let's support each other in the many coalitions that are starting to spring up around the state. But please look at us as the leaders that we are, and please contribute to our legal defense fund. Hand up. Oh, and Jim said if anyone wants to come up afterwards and speak on camera about what they might have learned tonight, he's going to be here for a while and he would welcome that. All right, one comment. Go ahead, Wendy Worcester.
I got a mic for you. Come in here with a mic.
Cathy, you've spoken very eloquently about the lawsuit. Hey, excuse me, just for a minute.
We got one more question here, if you'd give us a few minutes.
This is important because you have spoken about the need for fundraising. And what you're fundraising for are legal expenses to make sure that discovery process puts you in court. I believe it's January, correct? So by January, to have the best case possible so that our judicial branch of government can step in to potentially do what the legislative branch has failed to do thus far, and our executive branch, which inherited that omnibus bill, has a lot of executive discretion as to how they interpret, how they move forward, case by case, from this point forward, unless there's a serious monkey wrench put into this discussion. And I do believe that this coalition has that monkey wrench in the hands of a law firm. How much money is your target right now so that we don't drive home thinking, oh yeah, they need to do some fundraising? What do you need between now and say,
Between
I wouldn't even say
January, we need about
January, I would say
$150,000.
150,000. So you need 150 people who believe in what you do to write a check for $1,000. Okay? We'll write a check so that you drive home knowing you at least have one. But I would really ask those of you who cared enough to be here how deeply convicted you are to help get that coffer set up so that they can do an excellent job of discovery, because if they don't, it's a weaker case. And there is a lot of money on the other side, but truth is important. So thanks for assembling the technical experts, and I think we owe you some skin in the game to help you get it done.
David versus Goliath.
Thanks, everybody.